What's going on, friends? Choosing a camshaft for your Harley-Davidson is a very critical decision. I mean, this literally determines where your power on your motorcycle lands, where it's going to come on, and pretty much is going to dictate your entire riding experience. But there is one side to choosing a camshaft that nobody ever really talks about. This side of the camshaft is really only something that we find out about a little later on after we've got the camshaft installed and it's really too late to do anything about it. Installing a camshaft in your Harley-Davidson will absolutely transform your motorcycle. That is no secret there. Aside to a cam swap and getting away from stock that nobody really talks about or maybe even realizes till they get a new cam in there is the valve train noise that's going to be associated with it. Guys, please don't forget, before we get too far into the video today, please don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. So that awesome cam swap and power increase, this is usually pretty heavily overshadowed by all that valve train noise. Now, for most people, little added valve train noise really doesn't bother them too much, and some people, they really just can't stand the sound of it sounding like a box of rocks, because depending on how big of a cam you have, it can sound pretty gnarly. So guys, if valve train noise is a real issue for you, you're going to want to be very selective on which brand of camshaft that you choose. Now, you are going to have to give up a little something for something, so it's up to you to decide which you want to give up. So as with anything on a Harley-Davidson, we have to give up something for something. And as we all know, the stock cams, they are very mild. I mean, they are well suited for stage 1 setups. You get plenty of torque and power for what they are. Basically, if you're just cruising, doing a stage 1 setup, a regular old camshaft might be fine for you. The stockers, they're nice and quiet, which is fine for a lot of people, but not everyone. So while the stock camshafts are pretty nice and quiet, easy on the valve train, the big trade-off is a lot of that big horsepower and torque from the engine as is without any other modifications other than a camshaft. These cams, they're emissions compliant, and they really do, like I mentioned, they give you a decent torque, but it's just held down really low from what its full potential can be. Now, when it comes to swapping out a cam in your Harley-Davidson, generally the more aggressive the cam is, the more higher lift, more duration, the more noise you're going to get out of it, especially if you get into really high lift, high-end camshafts and all the components in the engine to match with those really stiff valve springs. That valve train is going to be extremely loud. Now, the biggest thing with the valve train noise after a cam swap is if you don't really know what to expect, you might actually think that there's something wrong with the motorcycle. Now, with a cam swap and a higher lift cam, pretty much anything other than stock, you are going to have a little bit of added valve train noise. You're going to have a little more ticking and clicking in there. There's nothing wrong with the motorcycle. Those noises are perfectly normal. Now, I've seen a lot of times people will spend a lot of money tearing the bike down and putting it back together, swapping out lifters, trying different brands, different styles, different types of lifters, trying to quiet down that noise. In some cases, you may be able to get a little change in sound, but generally, for the most part, it's really not worth the time, effort, and the money spent. Now, there are some ways to quiet down the valve train when you're doing a cam swap, and we'll take a look at that a little bit later on in the video. Now, most of you know that have been on the channel for a really long time, I am a big fan of wood cams. Wood cams are excellent for all-out power and shitting and getting. Now, the one thing I will say about wood cams, and I do warn a lot of people about this, yes, they have very big power numbers. Yes, they pull hard. Yes, they will make your otherwise stock motorcycle scream, but they're loud. These cams are very, very loud when compared to other cams on the market, and that is the big trade-off for the big power that they produce. Wood cams ramp pretty hard, they nose off really quick, and I mean, this is where their big power comes from. So while you're getting just basically more mechanical music from the engine, yes, you get more power, but you have to deal with more of that mechanical music. For most Harley-Davidson owners, the added valve train noise really isn't nothing compared to the insane amount of power that you gain when you use something like a wood cam. But if you are really conscious of that noise in the valve train, there are some other brands of cams out there that still produce really, really good high horsepower and torque, and they still, obviously, you're still going to have some degree of valve train noise, but overall, these are going to be a lot quieter than what you would get with a wood cam. I really got to hand it to Zipper's Redshift cams. These cams are really made to have a little bit smoother, quieter operation, but still produce the big power. Zippers is a really good go-to cam to get some good power out of it and still have somewhat of a quiet operation. For example, let's take a look at a twin cam 103 with just kind of a nice little mid-range Zippers Redshift bolt-in cam in it. Here we have a 103 with a Redshift 527, which produces a very nice torque curve up to 110 foot-pounds of torque. And it's not shy with the horsepower, coming in about 93. That's really good power for a cam that's designed to keep the valve train noise down quite a bit. It's not all-out power, closer to 100 horsepower, but at 93, we're really splitting hairs there. Now, everybody loves S&S. S&S cams are really awesome camshafts. You really can't go wrong with S&S. They produce big power. Yes, they're still a little noisy somewhat, but not nearly as bad as some of the wood cams out there. And a very, very popular S&S cam is the 585. Now, the 585 may come on a little bit later in the RPM range, but once it comes on, it really does not disappoint when it comes to torque and horsepower. Here I'm using another twin cam 103 as an example, but the party starts at about 3,000 RPMs. It is game on when it hits, and the power climbs to a max of 97 horsepower and 108 foot-pounds of torque. These are both really good examples of what a bolt-in cam that's got a little bit less aggressive ramp angle and they don't nose off quite as quick, and they also make plenty of horsepower and torque while still doing it with a little bit quieter valve train. Now, if you really don't care about valve train noise whatsoever, let's just take a look at a pretty aggressive wood cam, still bolt-in, but once again, aggressive wood horsepower straight from a bolt-in cam in a twin cam 103. Here's a wood TW9996A in a twin cam 103, producing 101 horsepower and 112 foot-pounds of torque. Now, granted, the valve train is going to sing like a mechanical bird, but that's the trade-off when it comes to big power in camshafts. Now, even with aftermarket camshafts, there are ways to reduce that mechanical noise, and all of this starts when you install the camshaft. Now, upgrading a camshaft, you should be doing most of these things anyhow, period, end of story, depending on how many miles your bike has. Number one, put new cam bearings in it. Put new cam chains in it. Put new cam chain tensioners in it. And also, put a good set of fresh lifters in there when you do all of this. And if your budget allows for it, go ahead and upgrade to a billet cam plate and a high volume oil pump. You'll really be surprised how much, even with a new higher lift cam in there, how much this can really reduce a lot of that valve train noise that you're going to hear. Even doing everything right in the cam chest, doing all the upgrades you're supposed to do, you can still have a little bit of tick in the top end. And that tick can be eliminated with a set of rocker lockers. And if you're not really familiar with what rocker lockers are, I've got a whole video of it that I'll pop up right here for you guys if you want to check that out and find out how you can further reduce your valve train noise using a set of rocker lockers. So if you put in a brand new cam, or you're considering putting in a new cam, and you haven't really experienced any of that really loud valve train noise that a Harley's going to make with a high lift cam, there's nothing wrong with it in most cases, unless something's gone horribly wrong in there. There are some bad sounds that it shouldn't make, but as far as a little knocking and ticking and sound like somebody's shaking around a box of rocks up there, that's pretty normal with a high lift cam. So don't freak out, don't start tearing it down or taking it back to whoever put it in for you and telling them there's something wrong with the bike. But obviously, if noise is a problem, you probably want to steer clear of wood cams. Go with the S&S or go with the Redshift. And if you do everything right and you still got some annoying noise, check out the rocker locker video. That'll kind of explain the little issue that Harley had in there. I guess you could call it a manufacturing defect. It's just Harley-Davidson to me. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. And if you did, please don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. But until next week, guys, you stay safe on the streets, ride smart, dodge those cars, and I'll catch you back here next week with a brand new video. Thanks for watching.